What is up, everybody? Good morning from Pocono Raceway here in Long Pond, Pennsylvania. Today's going to be a very different vlog. We're not going to go to any parks. We are here for the NASCAR race weekend. Okay, hang on. Stop right there. First off, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode. I am Joe, and today's adventure is going to be a little bit different. Basically, after I posted those series of vlogs from July, as a new YouTube content creator, it's a learning process. I had a few copyright claims on those videos for audio that was playing in the background. Now, at NASCAR races, they play a lot of copyrighted material, and just for the purposes of I was still working off of my iPhone capturing this footage, I did not want to risk capturing all the background noise and not even being able to use that footage. So instead, I decided I was just gonna take some notes while I was at the racetrack. I would come back here, I would do more of a review style vlog and show you some of the footage that I captured when I talk about those things throughout this review. That's why we're doing this instead of being actually at the track. I do have one more race that I'm planning to attend later this year, so hopefully at that point I'll kind of have learned enough, I'll worked out the bugs, and I'll be able to provide you a more fun vlog for that race. So for this vlog, we are at Pocono Raceway, or for this review, we're talking about Pocono Raceway. This was from the July 23rd and 24th race weekend at the track. This July 23rd, 24th race weekend was for the NASCAR Xfinity Series, NASCAR Camping World Truck Series, as well as the NASCAR Cup Series. There was also an ARCA Menard Series race. I'm not really going to dive into that. That was on Friday. I wasn't there on Friday, just Saturday and Sunday, so that's really what I'm going to be reviewing. Also, fair warning, I'm not going to be talking about the disqualifications for Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch. I'm not going to be talking about how, certain elements of the race affected the outcome. I'm not doing an in-depth analysis really on the race. I will speak about a little bit about how the racing was in general, but this is not an analysis of the race. This is not an analysis of the NASCAR playoffs and heading into the postseason. It's really more so just about the travel tips, things we saw around the racetrack as a fan, what was the experience, and would I do it again? That's more so what I'm getting at with this video. So if you're here for disqualifications and all that other fun stuff, I'm sorry, you're just not gonna find it here. I am planning on starting a NASCAR podcast soon. It's in the works, and when I do, that would be the place where you can find some in-depth race analysis. But for right now, this is a travel vlog, and I'm sticking with that. So without further ado, let's get into it, the review of the 2022 Pocono Race Weekend, July 23rd and 24th. Before we talk about this specific weekend, I want to break this video up into parts, and I'm going to start with some background information about Pocono Raceway. Pocono Raceway is a 2.5 mile triangular racetrack. It sits in Long Pond, Pennsylvania, and it is just one of the weirdest, craziest racetracks, shape-wise at least, that there is. It's really unique for a number of reasons, including the fact that it is triangular shaped. Most racetracks are ovals. We have a few tri-ovals, a few quad ovals, more ovals. And in addition to that, we have a handful of road courses. We used to have the rectangular configuration of Indianapolis. That's been transformed to a road course. But Pocono's the only triangular racetrack. It's the only racetrack on the NASCAR circuit with just 3 turns. The track was founded by Dr. Joseph Mattioli, more commonly referred to by Doc by the locals, and Rose Mattioli, and this facility opened in 1971. The track has hosted NASCAR Cup Series events since its opening year. It's hosted the NASCAR Xfinity Series, which, by the way, if you don't know about the NASCAR Xfinity and the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series, think of the NASCAR Xfinity Series as the AAA minor leagues, under the MLB. That's that top division where the players are right on the brink of moving into that top division. And then the Camping World Truck Series can also be compared to a minor league division. They're more like the AA, so they still have a few ranks to go. They still need to refine some of those skills, but they're on the way up. Anyway, like I was saying, Pocono Raceway has been hosting the Xfinity Series since 2016, so it's still a pretty fresh new racetrack for that series. and then they've been hosting the Camping World Truck Series since 2010. Now that you know a little bit more about Pocono Raceway, let's dive into the race weekend. On Friday, the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series had their practice session and their qualifying session. The ARCA Menards Series raced on Friday. Now, like I said earlier, I was not actually at the Speedway on Friday. I'm not really going to talk too much about Friday. I did have a friend who attended. He said he really enjoyed it. Not too many people floating around. He also had a pit pass, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And he was able to go into the garage, go on pit road, and he was able to meet a few drivers from those series. With Friday, you didn't actually have to purchase a ticket. All you had to do was buy a Monster Energy and recycle the can at the front gate. That was your admission to all of the Friday events. Now, Saturday, this was the day that I first arrived. Saturday was the big day, really, not in terms of who was racing, but this was a much more eventful day than Friday, or even in my opinion, in Sunday was more eventful. There were 2 races. You had the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series have their event at noon, and then the NASCAR Xfinity Series raced at 5 p.m. In addition to that, you had Xfinity practice and qualifying early that day. You also had Cup Series qualifying and practice ahead of their Sunday race. So a lot happening on the track, and in addition, a lot happening off the track in some of the fan areas that we were able to access. Tickets for the Saturday race really didn't vary too much in price. It was basically broken down into 2 categories. You could either buy a general admission ticket, which was good for the lowest deck, which is the 100 deck, the 200 deck, which is sort of that higher deck, and then that was grouped together as your general admission. You could sit anywhere you wanted along the front stretch on the 100, 200 level for $35. If you wanted, you could get a better seat that had a little bit of shading at the 300 level. So these are higher up than the 100 and the 200 level, or the 200 and the 100 level, I guess. So it's the highest section. It's about 4 or 5 additional rows at the top that are all shaded, and those tickets were $50. On Sunday, it was the NASCAR Cup Series' turn. So that is the biggest series, all the big stars. They hosted the M&M's Fan Appreciation 400, and it started at 3 p.m. on Sunday. Ticket prices varied a lot more for this race. I'm not going to get too far into it because I could probably speak 15 minutes alone on the pricing structure. And so I'm not going to get too far into that, but I will say I bought the tickets for my party at a discounted rate. After M&M's announced that they were going to be the title sponsor of the race, they were hosting an 18% discount for certain sections. Now, you couldn't actually go and pick the exact seats that you want. There were 4 sections you could choose from, and you would choose a section, it would randomize your seat. After that 18% discount, and then you add on the fees, all that stuff, those tickets ended up being $142.20 for 2 tickets, so $71.10 for 1 ticket. In addition, parking was free the entire weekend. You could park anywhere on Pocono Raceway's premises, and you got free parking. And on top of that, they had other special packages. I know the Hendrick Motorsports drivers were seen at an exclusive hospitality event, and they were having meet and greets and whatever. That was an additional fee on top of that. In addition to the packages, you could also add on for $50 a paddock and pit road access pass that would allow you to go onto pit road. You could spend time in Autograph Alley, where a lot of the drivers pass through on the way back and forth through Pocono Raceway, so they'll sign some autographs for fans, as well as access the infield area around the racetrack. Even better, that $50, if you were there for multiple days, you stretched your money, because that $50 was a one-time fee, and you could use that infield pass for the entire length of the weekend. So if you were there Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, you got to use that pass all 3 days. So now that we've kind of covered the basis of this was the race weekend, let's move into this next part of the video, which is going to cover, generally speaking, what is happening at the racetrack. The track grounds are massive. I know 2.5 miles probably doesn't sound a lot. I'm willing to bet most of the people watching this drive 2.5 miles on the day-to-day. But when you see 2.5 miles laid out in front of you in the form of this massive triangular racetrack, it makes you appreciate the length of those 2.5 miles a lot more. And because this facility, this track is so massive, the entire premises are just beyond belief how huge they are. All the parking is in a just massive grassy field right out front of the racetrack. There are some private properties that have offered parking in the past that were offering parking for a small fee. We did pass a parking lot that was offering $20 each day, so not a bad deal. I think if you take that and you park in some of those private lots or private properties, it sometimes does benefit you when you're leaving the racetrack. You're a little bit closer to the road, which can assist you in getting out faster. So pretty much outside of the main area that's on the front side of the racetrack, it's a giant grassy field. On the front stretch, in addition to that giant grassy lot that I'm telling you about, now before you get to the grandstands on the front stretch of the racetrack, and after you sort of pass through the parking, there's this area that's called the fan midway. And to me, this is easily one of the most important parts of a race weekend as a fan, determining as to kind of if you got that value's worth. I love going to the midway. It's probably my favorite thing to do at a race weekend. It's unique at every racetrack, depending on where you are, what the people are like at that race weekend, maybe some of the sponsors who come out. Let me backtrack for a second. I didn't even explain the midway. The fan midway is an area where you can go basically to shop, you can grab some food, you can meet other fans. There's a ton usually of those samplings and free giveaways from sponsors who come out and want to set up tables to interact with fans. There were a lot of sponsors out for this particular race weekend. This weekend had a really good and really healthy midway, and there were actually a ton of sponsors that had come out to set up tables. Chevrolet had multiple driver appearances. They had a bunch of display cars out. Thorici, McDonald's, DoorDash, M&M's, Frito-Lay, Raptor, US Air Force had a tent set up, and there were plenty others. In addition, the midway is where you have those very famous driver haulers that get set up and they sell merchandise out of. This has always been a staple of the race day experience, going up to those haulers, checking out what they have. Around the track, there really isn't a whole lot. For the most part, there are two roads that surround the racetrack. One side is pretty much just trees and fields, and there's just, I mean, it's kind of in the middle of a mountainous area. There's one area that's flat, and that's the track. That's about it. There's a few local places to eat. The only thing that I will say is pretty immediate to the race property. It's kind of diagonal from turn 3. On the other side of the road that runs across that side of the racetrack, there's a small building. That's where Pocono Organics is. At Pocono Organics, they have independent sellers who set up tents there, and they travel with NASCAR from most weeks, and they don't work for NASCAR. They are selling officially licensed NASCAR merchandise, but because they don't work for NASCAR, you know, they're independent businesses, small businesses that travel the circuit, they go to the racetracks, but because they don't work for NASCAR, a lot of times they can't actually be set up on the track property, so they'll set up nearby it. In this case, they were over by Pocono Organics, right off of one of the main roads. And the last part of this track familiarization tour, I guess, would be the concourse and the grandstands. Now, for the most part, it really just is the concourse and the grandstands. I can't speak too much about that. There is a very long building that runs most of the length of the front stretch. It's called the Long John. It's got a handful of restrooms in it, as well as small arches that you walk through to get from the fan midway into the concourse. Pretty much once you get onto the concourse, it's just food and going up into the grandstand. Food, drink, grandstand, that's it. The grandstands at Pocono Raceway run basically from the exit of turn 3 all the way down through that long front stretch, pretty much down 3/4 the way to the turn 1 entrance. So if you're at either far end of the grandstand, just because of the structure itself and because of people standing throughout the race, it can actually hinder your view as you look down. So if I'm in turn 1 over here and turn 3 is over here and I'm looking down, there's actually a pretty good chance I might not be able to see the exit of turn 3 onto the front stretch. The food at the racetrack for the most part is your everyday kind of barbecue racetrack type of food that you'd probably expect when you go out, or really at any sporting event, what you'd expect when you go out. Chicken tenders, fries, hamburgers, hot dogs, soft drinks. You know, they have some snack carts. They did have a few, I will say that this doesn't happen at every racetrack that I go to. They did have a few more unique vendors. There was like a smoke pit barbecue food truck that was over there. They had a Caribbean cuisine food truck that was there as well, which I can't ever recall a time I saw that. So they did have some more unique offerings. They also had some snacks, funnel cakes, fried Oreos. I believe they also might have had ice cream and snow cones. So when you get into the grandstands, and I know I already talked about this a little bit, but at Pocono there are 3 decks. So you have the lower deck, so that's like the first 15, 16 rows. So that is going to be your 100 level. And then when you go up one more deck, your 200 level, that's going to be from about row 15, 16, all the way up to almost row 45, 46, 47. And then on top of that, your highest deck, the best view that there is at the racetrack, and the only shaded seating, that's your 300 level. That's only 4 rows at the top, and that makes up your front stretch grandstand seating. There are other ticketing options, of course, when you go to the racetrack. You don't have to sit into a grandstand. There's camping options on the infield. There's also skybox tickets. You can actually go into that large skybox that runs across part of the front stretch. And that sits even higher, actually, than the 300 level. Those are really expensive. I think I saw something like starting $600 for a race. And I don't know, that might have just been for one person. So now, I think we finally covered kind of your all you need to know before you head to the racetrack, the breakdowns of what's what. Now let's actually get into what we did when we were at the racetrack this weekend. So we drove to the racetrack on Saturday morning. We got to the facility around 9 o'clock. By the time we settled in, we parked, we got our bags ready. It was about 9:30. That's when we were on the move to the midway. So first things first, we went through security, and this was you know, like your typical theme park security, I guess, where you have your metal detectors. You know, you take metal out of your pockets. If you have a bag, you put it to the side. Someone's going to take a quick look through it. You walk through the metal detector, and then you move on out to go get your ticket scanned. Now, this is something that's really unique about Pocono Raceway because there are not a lot of tracks who do this. But to actually get into the midway at Pocono Raceway, you do need to scan your ticket. Now, I've been to 13 NASCAR tracks, I guess 12 if you count Charlotte and Charlotte-Roval, you know, because they're one facility. But out of all of the facilities I've been to for a NASCAR event, I have never, except for Pocono Raceway, when I've been to Pocono before and Pocono this weekend, it's the only track I've ever had to actually scan the ticket to get into the midway. Typically, you don't need to scan that ticket until you actually go into the grandstand, and it allows people who maybe they haven't gotten the chance to buy a race ticket yet, it allows them the opportunity to still explore the midway, maybe meet a driver, and decide whether or not they want to buy a ticket. At Pocono, you can't do that. You have to have the ticket in order to get into the midway and have in on those festivities. Once we got into the midway on Saturday morning, we really just sort of explored. We knew that the first race was at noon and we didn't have too much time, so we had all of our stuff packed for that first race. We did get some of those free samples. Chevrolet has a QR code that you can scan, and then you fill out a survey, you can get a shirt. We got those free shirts. Threechy was having some sampling. Busch Latte was there. It's a Busch beer. Of course, 21 or older only if you were interested in Threechy or Busch Latte. McDonald's had a hauler that was rigged out for cooking, and they were giving out free samples of McFlurries as well as French fries. Next door was DoorDash. They were really one display, if anything, and they had some areas where you could kind of sit and eat, but Even though they were covered, there was so little covering. It was maybe enough covering for 3 or 4 tables. Now, in order to get a free sample, you did have to take a quick poll for DoorDash. So you'd scan a QR code, fill out I think it was 6 questions on your phone. You submit it, you show it to the representative. They let you get online to go get that McFlurry and that small fry. And if you wanted to get a Kurt Busch or Bubba Wallace hero card, as they are the drivers sponsored by McDonald's, you had to download the McDonald's app, show it to them, and then they would give you those hero cards. We also sampled some Rowdy energy drink. This is Kyle Busch's energy drink. We also got some free chips courtesy of Frito-Lay. One of the other things, and I love this about Pocono Raceway because I think this is the only racetrack I've ever seen them at, there were professional wood carvers there who were showing how they make these wooden I don't even know if statue is the right word, but they're phenomenal. I love when I go to Pocono and I go and see these guys and see their craft up close. A lot of times they auction these products off, as I believe they were this weekend, and I don't know, it's just something you don't see every day. And of course, we did run by the merchandise haulers. Now, I didn't get anything that was driver specific. However, I did purchase a weekend program as well as an event pin. These are things that you can pretty much find at most racetracks. The pins you can find almost anywhere. The programs, it really depends. So really, from the time we got there to the time that we went to see the trucks from the grandstands, it was pretty much all midway, nothing else. Shopped, checked some stuff out, and then went up to the grandstands to watch the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series race. Now, I do want to speak a little bit to the quality of the racing, because when you go and you purchase a ticket, you do want to see a good race. You don't want to see a race where it's just boring, it's stagnant, whatever. It was a little bit of a rough start. Most of stage 1 of that race was actually run under the caution flag. From there weren't too many cautions. Stage 2 was a little bit tame. Stage 3, I think, was a little bit more exciting. There seemed to be some late race maneuvering happening towards the front of the field, and that was much more exciting to watch from the grandstand. The important thing to note about Pocono Raceway, by the way, and I'll say this across the board for all 3 series, for Camping World Trucks, for Xfinity, as well as for the Cup Series, Pocono is a very strategy-driven race. There are not many other tracks that are so strategy-driven, so even though there may not be a lot of passing on the racetrack, there's typically a lot of other things happening behind the scenes that we have to figure out to really understand, okay, what's happening in this race. Now that we have stages, the strategy is a little bit easier to follow. It seems like there's fewer strategies than there were prior to stage racing. So in the stands, it makes it a little bit easier, actually, which is good because you can't always hear the PA announcers because the cars are just so loud. Overall, I'd say once we passed stage 1, the quality of the racing was good. Especially at the end of the race, there was a really pretty exciting battle at the end. I would say that I felt very happy with the way that the Truck Series race went. The Camping World Truck Series race started around 12. It concluded roughly at 1:48. Pretty short race. Now, at that point, typically, I would have gone back into the midway. Rather than doing that, however, I decided to scan my ticket out, which is something I'll explain here in a second, and I just decided to go back to my car. Basically, if you left the midway area or the track area, you had to, very much just like when your ticket gets scanned in, you would just have to show them your ticket again and have it scanned out. This is something that only a few racetracks have done. I know, I think Dover earlier this year, I did not have to do that after the race got rained out on Sunday and pushed to Monday. Last year at Daytona, I did have to do that after the Xfinity race got postponed due to rain. Always, always, always ask someone at the track if you need to get your ticket scanned out. All right, and now going back to the fact that I went back to my car. So this weekend was incredibly hot, both days. Saturday, I believe, was 95 degrees, whereas Sunday was about 93, 92, maybe only 91 degrees. There was quite a bit of humidity both of those days as well. And Saturday in particular was, to me, was worse because there were just no clouds. There was no cover. There was no relief. If you were lucky enough to, wedge your way under some type of shading, then you maybe cooled off a little. We decided let's just go back to the car. We'll open up the windows. We'll see if any wind comes in. Nothing really did. We tried to just get out of the sun and just relax. I feel like at that point we had hit most of the things in the midway that we wanted to, so we felt like maybe it was okay to go back and just relax and just take care of ourselves, right? You got to remember, you are outside. You need to drink a lot of water. You need to stay hydrated. Even though you may not be doing a ton of physical activity, you still are outside and it is still easy to get dehydrated. We did spend a little bit more time in the midway. We grabbed something to eat, and then we went into the grandstands. The quality of the Xfinity Series race, to me, this was the best race of the weekend. I really liked this race. There was a phenomenal battle between Noah Gragson and Ty Gibbs at the end. If I had bought this $35 ticket and the only thing I had gotten to do that entire day was be in the grandstand to watch the Xfinity Series race, I would have been satisfied because the race was just that exciting and that good. That race started at 5 p.m. It wrapped up sometime around 7:30. And then we made our way out. Now, we did get a hotel. The hotel itself was fine. Actually, I somewhat wish, in hindsight, I had done a room tour. I had not planned doing a room tour simply because it just wasn't going to be the focus of the vlog. But I feel like that hotel, it was very clean. I will leave a link to that hotel down in the description below if you want to check it out. On to Sunday. Quite honestly, Sunday was a lot more of the same. I feel like typically when you hit a race on a Saturday and a Sunday, the midway doesn't really change. Maybe, the driver appearances, that might be different, but the midway itself doesn't really change. We did go get some more samples from some of those places that we loved. I would say the major difference, and there were actually, I guess, 2 of them. We did attend some driver appearances on Sunday. So Ross Chastain was at the Chevrolet tent. He's been one of the hottest drivers this season, so we went, saw what he had to say. At the M&M stage, they were having a Q&A with current M&M's driver, Kyle Busch, as well as former retired M&M's drivers, David Gilliland, Ken Schrader, and Ernie Irvan as well were there doing a Q&A with Kyle Busch. So that was just something that was really cool. M&M's has been such a big part of NASCAR for a long time, and this is going to be their final season sponsoring a race car. So to see them pour everything into this weekend was just so cool. I would say the other really big difference between Saturday and Sunday for us is, again, because we hit so much in the midway, we decided to take some of that extra time on Sunday to walk over from the racetrack where we had parked to Pocono Organics to go check out some of the sellers who were there. These sellers, like I said, it's a lot of small businesses, a lot of times operated by 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 people. And a lot of times you can find some stuff for a really good deal at some of these tents. We hit these tents around 1 p.m. and a lot of the owners of those small businesses, they were actually already starting to pack up their stock. It seemed like the die-cast sellers in particular had already really started to box up their stuff, but there were t-shirts, hats, all sorts of things, flags. Quite honestly, I was a little disappointed with the selection of the 124 scales. There was really only one seller who had a significant bunch of 124 scale die cast. There were more 164s across the board. It seemed like multiple people had, 1 or 2 boxes at least of the 164s. I just didn't see anything that really caught my eye. And as far as other merchandise went, I just didn't, again, see something that really stuck out to me. Pro tip, now that I've done this, I absolutely would not recommend walking from the racetrack over to Pocono Organics. Get in your car and drive there. And if you're the type of person who, like me, who doesn't want to leave their parking space because you feel like it might be hard to get a good parking space if you come back, then go at the start of the day. Before you even park at the racetrack, that was a 0 out of 10 move. Do not walk from the racetrack over there. Once we walked back over from Pocono Organics and we fixed our bags, we put in everything that we wanted for the race, we got over to the security line. We got in the security line on Cup Series race day around 2:20. We did not get into the grandstand until about 2:50. And at that point, they were already doing the invocation. This line was huge. In fact, I don't know that I've ever seen a line so long at a racetrack to go through security. Maybe the only line I've ever seen this long to go through security is Dover, but certainly not this close to race time. I think the big takeaway from this was just Sunday was so much more crowded than Saturday. The line was way backed up, and in fact, really just kind of got to the point where they were doing, you know, just a really quick security check. So we got into the grandstands for the Cup race pretty much as the invocation and all the pre-race ceremony stuff was happening. Quality of that race itself, I would say, was somewhere between the trucks and the Xfinity. It seemed like it was pretty hard to pass on the track for a handful of drivers. Now, getting out of the racetrack on Sunday, and actually I really should have even mentioned this, getting out of the racetrack on Saturday as well. Normally getting out of your parking spot and getting to the main road is a little bit of a process in itself. On Saturday, we really didn't have a problem. We actually made it, from the time we got into the car and turned it on and made it onto the main road, it was only about 5 or 6 minutes. On Sunday, we did give it a little bit more time. It was about 30 minutes. However, we were pretty close to the exit, so we were just able to go ahead and, you know, get on the road. It did take a little bit longer. There was a little more traffic because there's a little more people, maybe 30 minutes, but overall, not bad really either day. Let's start summing all of this up. I'm going to give you a few pros of this weekend. I'm also going to give you a few cons based off of my experience this weekend at the track. So let's start with the pros, the things I liked about this race. Now, I want to preface this by saying that I did have relatively low expectations. I had been to Pocono 5 times before: 2012, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017. So 5 races prior. But 2017 was the last time I was at the racetrack. So it's been a handful of years at this point. I remember specifically about Pocono, the midway, that last year, those last 2 years, being pretty boring and pretty dull. And that's when I only went for 1 day rather than 2. I have to say, the July 2022 Pocono Race Weekend Midway was probably one of the best midways I have had the pleasure of spending time in, maybe since before 2020. I felt like there was so much to do, and I do feel like I pretty much tried to rip through it on that first day so that I could go over and try to do different things on Sunday, and ended up just, you know, spending time in the car just trying to get out of the heat for the most part Sunday. But really, for the most part, it was such a fun midway. There were so many different sponsors, so many different samples and giveaways, and I feel like I usually don't see that many from the week to week. And I really wasn't expecting that at Pocono of all tracks, so I was really pleasantly surprised. And I just want to say to all those sponsors who came out to make this experience for what it was for the fans, thank you to the sponsors. And Pocono, thank you for hosting this incredible midway this weekend. There were quite a few driver appearances. I had mentioned the 3 former M&Ms plus Kyle Busch. Those 4 drivers were out at the M&M's booth. Tyler Reddick made an appearance at the Ricci. Ross Chastain, as well as other drivers like Matt Benedetto, Ty Dillon, were making appearances at the Chevrolet tent. Justin Allgaier actually made an appearance at his merchandise hauler as well. Bubba Wallace and Kurt Busch went and spent some time at the McDonald's and DoorDash tents. I know I said this one earlier, but I'm going to throw it in again as a pro. The ticket value for Saturday was so good for just over $40 after taxes and fees and whatever. Got 2 races, just a bunch of on-track time, right? You got the Camping World Truck Series, the NASCAR Xfinity Series races. You had qualifying and practice for Cup, qualifying and practice for Xfinity. I mean, it was just, on top of that, you had the amazing midway. I would do Saturday again in a heartbeat. It's not even a question. The last thing I'm going to say as a pro, and I think this is something that at certain tracks goes unappreciated maybe, but Pocono Raceway is a track where you can bring your own cooler with ice and your own drinks. Now, this has been something that was widely accepted prior to 2020. After 2020, a few tracks had made modifications to this policy where either you couldn't bring ice, you couldn't bring in a cooler, but especially on such a hot weekend like this, it's important to stay hydrated. I love that call. I love being able to bring my own stuff into the racetrack. Sometimes I want a drink that they don't offer on property, right? I mean, even if it's not 95 degrees and I'm just melting into my seat, it's really good to have my own stuff that I know I like and to not feel like I need to spend any money additional at the racetrack. Now, the cons of the weekend. I'm going to start this first one off just by saying that I'm not mad whatsoever about this one because I know there's nothing that Pocono can do about this. The heat was awful. I've said it a few times, but it was just sweltering heat. It was muggy both days, really humid. I mean, it does dampen the experience a little bit because you can't spend all your time thinking about having fun. You need to take care of yourself on days like those. Now, while I cannot say that I hold the heat against Pocono Raceway, obviously they don't control the weather. The thing I will say about it is that I wish they had more shading. Shading is a huge problem at Pocono. There's virtually zero shading. The only shade you might be able to get at the track is if you're under the grandstands, if you are sitting in that 300 level, or maybe if you're lucky enough to find one of the smaller tents, which, I mean, even those in the midway provide almost no real shade. If you're able to find one that's angled just so perfectly for where the sun is for that specific moment in time to where you can get some shade for a little bit, but I mean, there's just really absolutely no shade. Hopefully for 2023, that is something that Pocono can say, okay, maybe we can set up a larger tent that blocks out some shade. We can throw up some fans in there, turn those on. Maybe they missed, maybe they don't, I don't know. But hopefully there is some type of solution to that, just because, again, it was really hot. I didn't really want to have to walk all the way back out to my car. I knew I was going to have to go back out anyway, so at that point, what difference did it really make? But not everybody's going to be in that boat where they feel like they want to or have to go back out to their cars. Some people are going to want to stay close to the racetrack, and therefore they might want that area, especially with some cooling, just an opportunity to get out of that brutal sun for a little bit of time. Another thing that I noticed over the course of the weekend, and this was really, I want to say that this was somewhat inconsequential, and it didn't really massively deter my opinion of either day, but there were a few patches around the facility of asphalt that you could tell had just basically been freshly laid down. There were a handful of patches, or maybe 2 or 3 large ones, sort of by the security lines, and then 1 or 2 as well on the concourse that we passed by. Now, there may have been more on the concourse. I did not walk all the way down to the turn 1 end because we were by turn 3, but those patches of asphalt, I mean, maybe we're down for a month tops. They were so dark compared to the rest of the asphalt around them, and you could actually, by stepping over them, you could feel more heat coming up off of that blacktop than you could of the older asphalt. On top of that, all those new patches, because it was so hot, they were so sticky too. I mean, I put my foot down and I had to really, like, you know, try to get it off the ground. I don't know how to describe that. Now, again, that didn't really deter my opinion really in a negative fashion for either day. It was a very minor thing that happened. However, my concern would be if someone fell on that blacktop, it's probably going to hurt a lot more and burn a little bit more than if you just fell on the old asphalt. So now the good thing about this is that this is something that just with time is going to remedy itself. By the time 2023 rolls around, that's not going to be a problem. So really, in the grand scheme of things, as far as determining whether or not I want to go again, I mean, that's almost inconsequential. For all you fans who have ever been fortunate enough to go onto the racetrack, if you've ever stepped in that grip strip, that resin, PJ1, whatever you want to call it, that chemical compound that the cars get added grip to if they run over it. If you've ever stepped on that and you've had to like really kind of pull your shoe off of the grip strip, that's pretty much what stepping on this asphalt felt like. For anyone who hasn't been on a grip strip on a racetrack before, imagine if you just dumped a bunch of soda syrup, let it dry, and then you stepped on that. It's sort of similar to that, but honestly a little bit worse. But again, being that it shouldn't really be a problem past this season, I'm not too worried about it. One of the other cons I'd mention is security. Now, this is something that hopefully will be fixed before 2023, and that Pocono, I believe, can fix. So to me, it seemed like there was only one security point around the entire track. It seemed like a lot of people were filtering through this point. of course, you need to get through security to go scan your ticket to get into the midway. Now, there were only 4 scanners. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4. And 2 of those scanners, for the most part, we were being told that you had to have no baggage whatsoever. 2 of those, you could have baggage, but of course those would need to be checked as well. That was really bad. I don't know why there were 2 lanes for no bags. Most people carry bags with them, so to me it should have been a 3-to-1 breakup. But honestly, in general, because of how slow those security lines were during the weekend, as well as seeing that build up the second day, there really should have been more people doing those checks, and there should have been more metal detectors. So hopefully that is also something that Pocono can get fixed before the next time that there's a major event there. The last con, and I know this is going to probably sound maybe a little bit strange, but definitely matters to me when I go to buy food at the racetrack. Honestly, the quality of the food for the price I was paying was not good. On Saturday, I got a hamburger and fries for $13. The burger was $8, the fries were $5. I basically got, the burger was about the size of your value menu burger at a McDonald's or a Wendy's. And honestly, for the fact that it cost more, it was actually worse quality. The fact that I paid that much more for it, right? I could have gotten a double cheeseburger at McDonald's for like $2, right? And I saved myself $6. Knowing I paid that much more and got a product that was really not so great in general was not very satisfying. The fries were all right. I mean, they were average fries, but again, you know, $5, I feel like I could have gone to a McDonald's or a Wendy's and gotten something cheaper. Another member of my party elected to get the jerk chicken. They did not like that. Now, I'm not a fan of jerk chicken in general. They are, but they said that they also had the same opinion that the food quality for the price that they paid was just not there. I mean, again, it's a little disappointing because you're already forking out a pretty good deal of money to travel out there, right? You pay for gas, you pay for the hotel if you're staying multiple days like we did, you're paying for the race tickets. You would hope that you can find some better quality food, especially for the prices that we were paying. Now, I will say the jerk chicken and the hamburger and fries, they weren't really outrageous pricing, but when you think about what you could get, right, at McDonald's or Wendy's or Burger King or wherever you go, when you know you can get a better product for less money, there's always a little bit a sense of just why, right? In fact, the second day on Sunday, we did actually elect to get subs from Subway, bring them to the track because you could bring your own food in and have those subs. We got those subs each for, I mean, maybe $8, so about the same price as the hamburger, and they were far better, far more filling than what we got at the racetrack. So to wrap this all up, finally, would I do this again? Yes, I would go back to Pocono Raceway. Now, that's a little bit easy for me to say. I live pretty close to that track. It's not a huge drive. I can go there and back in one day, easy. But I will be honest, I really think Saturday was the all-star day. If I did not have as good of a day on Saturday, honestly, I may reconsider that more immediate yes and really, wait and see what the situation would be for 2023 if I were planning that trip back out there. I mean, like I said, $35 for 2 races. I mean, $40 once you add in the fees and the taxes and whatever. $40 for 2 races, you can't beat it. That's a great price. Sunday, though, the seating wasn't as comfortable. We didn't actually have any backs on the seating. There was just bleachers. So it was a little uncomfortable, especially when you're sitting in the heat of the day like that and in all the humidity. So, again, with Sunday, I think maybe even if I had done things a little bit differently, that may change my answer. I may have felt more satisfied. But really, all in all, I would say yes, I would go back. All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching. That's going to conclude this video. I'm hoping I'm going to have some sort of channel update or just more videos in general pretty soon. I'm still kind of finding my way with this whole YouTubing thing and trying to fit it into my more regular schedule. I will have more videos later this year. I do have another race planned. I also have another trip to Walt Disney World planned. I don't know if anything's gonna pop up in between or whatever. Hopefully I can do some local things as well, but I'll hopefully have a more developed plan later on that I can talk to you guys about. So thank you so much for watching, everybody. If you like this video, be sure to check out my other videos. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on those notifications. Like this video, that helps a ton. And leave me a comment. Let me know if there's anything specific that you guys want to see. Again, thank you again so much, everybody. It's a lot of fun to be making this this stuff, and I'm so glad that I've seen some people leave me some comments and interact with me and tell me what they like. So be sure to do that too. Leave me some comments below. So thank you, everybody, once again. I'm Joe, signing off until our next adventure.